Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with a little bit of an update on the Rogue market. This isn't going to be a very flashy video. I just want to give an update on some of my spec picks over the years, and I'll show you how I spec and how I spec these other ones and how I'll be specking in the future. I've got some pretty sweet specs with the Blitter Blossom unbanning and Wild Nacatl unbanning that I still think there's a few cards that have not quite hit the radar yet that I think we'll see a lot more play in Modern. But before we go over those cards, and before we go over my theory of how I speculate, let's just go ahead and look at one of my spec picks. I'm back here on the Facebook page. If you're not a member of the Facebook page, I highly, highly suggest it, as a lot of my news actually gets posted on Facebook rather than on YouTube or any other social media format. It's just easy for me. I'm on Facebook a lot, so I can just pop over to the RogueDeckBuilder.com page and post my thoughts and updates and whatnot. So go ahead and come over to Facebook.com/RogueDeckBuilder, join it, and you'll have a lot more updates on the channel. I promise you that. Anyway, so this first one was Stony Silence. This was back in June 15th here of last year. I said I just bought 100 Stony Silences at 0.07 tickets each. I'm thinking these are going to be the next Torpor Orbs on MTGO. Torpor Orb was a card that went from about 0.5 of this, 1/20th of a ticket up to, I believe it might be quite expensive. We'll have to look at it now because it's used in a ton of decks. And this spec was specifically for MTGO. It was not for paper, although Stony Silence is starting to see some movement on paper as well, as it is such a hoser in Modern. There's so many decks that this Stony Silence just completely shuts down, one of them being Tron and the other one being Affinity, and both of those I would say are top 10 in popularity of decks. And then you have some other decks that are decently popular, like Tezzeret Control, that it completely shuts down and whatnot. So anywho, let's just go over this. So I bought them at 0.07 piece. Now let's go ahead and look at what it's going for. Stony Silence. Here's a white-black tokens list. This is going to be very popular with the addition of Bitter Blossom. And this one runs 3 of them. That's what I run in Soul Sisters as well. So voila, look at that. $1.22, almost $1.25 on MTGO. Still, the paper is quite cheap at 50 cents, but you can see there is movement. It was 40 cents about back a couple months ago, and it is starting to spike a little bit. But if you look at all of the decks that it's used in, they're 68 in Jund, and Jund splashes for it all the time because it's one of their worst matchups is the red-green Tron. And same with Utopia Control. One of their worst matchups is red-green Tron, as well as it just completely hoses down Affinity. So anyway, but a lot of these other decks that are kind of fringe decks, like the Enchantment decks or Green-White Hate Bears decks, Death and Taxes, and as we saw, the black-white tokens also uses Stony Silence. I said personally in my Soul Sisters deck, I use 3 of them because yet again, RG Tron is one of my worst matchups. So it's good to have a sideboard card that just completely gives me an answer to that deck. So we're going to go back to the Facebook page. And so that was back on June 15th of 2013. And some people did disagree with me on that. But anyway, so another cool thing that if you haven't checked this video out, one of my very first, this is Rogue Market Episode 1, Part 1. This is the very, very first Rogue Market video I ever did. I gave my top 10 speculations. And if we look at them right now, Inkmoth Nexus at the time was going for $3. It is now $8. I still think this is a good pickup. I still think Inkmoth Nexus has room to grow. I think it's going to be about $10 to $12 in this Modern season because Bug Infect is coming back. I'm seeing a lot of people playing Bug Infect or just playing Black-Green Infect and whatnot. Is using Affinity. Affinity is a very popular deck, as I said, and I'm sure there's a few other decks. I know there is some other decks that use Inkmoth Nexus as well. So anyway, that has increased from $3 to $8. This is a year ago is when I made these predictions. So at the time, I think Scars and Mirrodin had just barely rotated, and we were into the Innistrad Return of Ravnica season. Anyway, the next one was Birthing Pod at $2.50. It is now up to $9.50. And I expect a little bit more of an increase, up to like $14 is where I think it will even out at, because this wasn't a pre-constructed deck that was highly open. But Melira Pod is everywhere on MTGO. Now that Deathrite Shaman is banned, and it looks like Birthing Pod is going to be the go-to deck for a lot of the pros, that this card is a 4 of in the deck, and of course it's going to spike up even more. But it was $2.50 at the time when I made the prediction, and now up to $9.50. And then we have the Scars and Mirrodin Fast Lands. They've only increased $1, Razorverge, Thicket, and Copperline Gorge, but both are on the move, especially Razorverge Thicket. We can go ahead and look at Razorverge Thicket here. We can just go ahead and open up like a Boggles deck, and they use Razorverge Thicket. This is a 4 of in this deck, but we can just click on this, and you can see that the price is definitely on the rise. Within the last month, it has gone up $1, and it is used in Melira Pod. We'll open up Melira Pod here as a 4 of usually in Melira Pod. This one's a 3 of in Melira Pod. But now it might become a little more popular than it was before, because you do need that first turn green for the Birds of Paradise, and instead of having a black for Deathrite Shaman, it is going to be needed to be a green for the Noble Hierarch. Yep, Noble Hierarch is going to replace Deathrite Shaman for sure. So anywho, let's go back to the predictions here. So, and then the huge pick was Verdant Catacombs. This was such a no-brainer. This was right after Star City. I made this video right after Star City. They increased the prices on there. They bought out all the vendors, increased their own prices of Scalding Tarn and Misty Rainforest from 15 to 35, but they did not touch Verdant Catacombs. It was at $12.50. This card is now going for $50, and it's not going to go anywhere. People are like, Jund's not going to see play. Jund is still the #1 deck. We have yet to see how much the Deathrite Shaman ban will actually affect Jund. I'm thinking that they just plop in a bunch more Inquisitions and maybe Scavenging Oozes, and then they go from there. With the deck, I don't think Deathrite Shaman is going to hurt the deck too much. The deck existed before Deathrite Shaman. The deck will definitely exist after Deathrite Shaman, whether it be it's still going to be black-green shell. So whether it be a black-green-blue, like a bug shell, with splashing in a few fairies here and there, Bitter Blossom, who knows, or just more control from like remands or whatnot. So you can either go a bug or a junk, or even stick with the Jund. I'm thinking that the Jund, the black-green shell, is here to stay. So anyway, Verdant Catacombs is still going to be the #1 used land, I think, in Modern. Anyway, so my next pick was Etched Champion. Etched Champion was $2.50. It is now $5.50, and that was a no-brainer, as well as it is a 3 of, sometimes a 4 of, in the Affinity. So let's just go ahead and pull up Affinity list here. So this is the cards that are in Affinity. Look at the paper prices here, because they do vary a lot from the MTGO. So anyway, the Etched Champions here are 3 of in 75% of the decks. And if you look at the price history here, it has gone steadily up in the last year when I made that prediction, as you can see. And I'm still thinking it has some room to grow. This all depends on exactly what the metagame brings to the field, if you want Etched Champions or not in the deck. There is a lot of options. I mean, it isn't really in the core. A lot of people use this in the sideboard because it just does hose a lot of decks. A 2/2, basically untargetable, indestructible card is very, very good in Affinity type deck, because if they destroy all your creatures, you can still have like the lands out, the indestructible lands, and like Cranial Plating, and you can still turn on like an Inkmoth Nexus, and then equip the Cranial Plating, and then swing in there for the win. And Etched Champion is just another artifact that adds to that. So anyway, we're gonna go back to the next one was Honor of the Pure. I think I was a little bit aggressive on this spec. I hadn't realized how many times it's been reprinted, but I'm thinking that Black-White Tokens is going to be a thing. I don't know if they'll want to run the Honor of the Pure over Intangible Virtue, but Honor of the Pure is still going to continue to see a lot of play in Modern, and I do expect it to increase in price unless there's a reprint. This card gets reprinted a lot, though. But anyway, my next big pick was Spellskite. This was $2.50, and it is now $12, and it probably has room to grow again with Splinter Twin on the rise. So let's just look at a Splinter Twin deck here, and they do run. This is the main deck that actually does run main boarded This one's actually not running main boarded. Let's look at this list. This should have a Spellskite. A lot of them actually do main board it, but let's just look at all the decks that Spellskite. You can see on the paper it still is increasing. I mean, it's the highest it is. Today is the highest it's ever been. Almost, well, yeah, around $12 is the highest it's ever been. So online it is increasing as well on MTGO. But if you look at all the decks that it's used on, it's used in Melira, it's used in Tron, it's used in this Delver list, and Scapeshift and Affinity, just to protect your main creatures. This is a 0/4 that can eat bolts all day long. Rather than your other, like your Noble Hierarch taking a bolt, or even like Abrupt Decay, and it keeps your key cards alive as you can assemble your combo and go off, and that's exactly what Splinter Twin tries to do. I have seen this deck run main-boarded Spellskites before. So this card, again, is $2.50 to $12 has been a incredible increase. So lastly, and then my other picks were kind of, again, too aggressive. Melira, I do think Melira is still a good pickup, as it is a 2 of in pod, usually. Some people usually even run more. And one is just, you don't want to run just one Melira in Melira pod because it's too fragile. And you do want two that you can go search for. So anyway, I still think Melira at $2 is a good pickup. And we're starting to see a few other combos with Melira. I know people use it in Commander, and I don't think it's used in Legacy. But yeah, the more plus our -1/-1 counters are in the format, the more abusable Melira is. And it's always going to be a card that people are going to play casually, as well as, like I said, it's still 2 of in probably the most popular deck now, with Jund losing popularity with Melira Pod. So Ratchet Bomb, at the time it was $1.50, and it was being used a lot in Modern and in Legacy. In a Legacy and Vintage deck used Ratchet Bombs to kind of clear the 0 casting cost artifacts, but it has been reprinted, so therefore the reprint killed any sort of increase that Ratchet Bomb would have seen. I do think it would have been just a couple bucks more, or maybe 50 cents more than it was at the time. But again, Vintage Legacy doesn't have the greatest demand for it. It takes a long time for Vintage and Legacy staples to start to increase, unless it's in like this incredibly overpowered deck that everyone has to build right then. But Ratchet Bombs were quite open in Scars of Mirrodin, and now that being reprinted, they're everywhere. So anyway, the last one, Phyrexian Revoker, which I still think is a good pickup because it's used in Legacy, Vintage, and Modern. It's used in Hate Bears. It's used in the Death and Taxes deck. Let's just take a look at that here. Let's look at a Death and Taxes. See if there's one. No Death and Taxes on this one. Let's see if we can find one on the list here. Let's see. Jeez. Yeah, not in a while Death and Taxes has done very well. So let's see. Let's just look it up. Phyrexian Revoker. And this, of course, it's a synergy with Aether Vial. You can flash it in. And it's a 2 mana that you use perfectly for 4. So you see here, so Death and Taxes in the Legacy, and then Death and Taxes in the Modern, and it's in Imperial Painter in Legacy, and even a few other decks are running it. But it's mainly this Modern one that I like to look at, as it is used as... See, this one's not using it. Let's just click on one of these, see if any of these are actually using them. Now that I talk about it. It's a 1 of in the Cyber here. I have seen a lot of people use Phyrexian Revokers, even mainboarded. Depending on the metagame, it completely does shut down certain cards. So anyway, it's definitely something you can keep your eye on, as it is a very, very good card. Then we go on, and that was my last pick for my very first Rogue Market. I know that I made some like Splinter Twin predictions later on. I'll have to look at those videos again to see how well I did in those ones as well. But anyway, I just want to now share with you how I speculate, and I really do use MTG Goldfish. It's my go-to site because it's so streamlined. It's so easy to look up stuff. So what I like to go is this decks, and then go to the metagame, and then look at Modern, and I just like to find undervalued cards that are used up a lot in big decks. And Jund doesn't really have any. We can look at Splinter Twin. Splinter Twin still has a few good pickups, one being like Grim Lavamancer. If Grim Lavamancer is only $2.50, and a lot of Splinter Twins do use these, and a lot of the the blue-red Delver decks use them a lot, and it is used in Legacy a little bit. So Grim Lavamancer at $2.50, I think, could see a spike. Let's just check out the price history and see how it is on the move here. It's got a little bit of a bump here, and they don't have any on the online list. We'll have to look at another version, but I mean, it's got a little bit of move on MTGO as well. But I think Snapcaster is actually a good pick here, and it's going crazy on MTGO. and it looks like it's starting to see a little bit of a bump. I mean, this is the lowest it's ever been a couple months ago, and it is starting to see an increase again. With Deathrite Shaman out of the format, I definitely think that the Snapcaster Mage has a lot of room to grow. But everything else out of Twin has pretty much already started to go crazy. I mean, you see Cryptic Commands have already gone crazy, Splinter Twins have already gone crazy. But if we look at these lands, this is the ones I want to look at. I think Sulphur Falls actually has some room to grow, as it is still used. You see the curve where Innistrad rotates, everyone gets rid of it, and everyone forgets about Innistrad. It's going to start curving back up, and I really do think this will be a $6 to $8 card coming soon, because it is a good. It's only had one reprint, and it's used also in Storm likes to use it, and Splinter Twin likes to use it, so two very popular decks like this card, and I do think that it has, again, some room to grow. But other than that, we can just check out the sideboard here. I don't really think there's too much room for Splinter Twin to grow. So we'll check out UWR Control. Again, I don't think there's much besides Snapcaster Mage out of UWR Control, or maybe Geist. Geist could grow because it is, but UWR Control is kind of hit or miss on Geist. Some of them, they like to call it the mid-range version, use it, and the very, very control version does not use it. Restoration Angel is also a very interesting pick, because again, I think we can see this curve. Yep, the curve is going to start to come back up again, as it is used in a lot of UWR controls. It is used to bounce, like in Death and Taxes, they use it to bounce like a few cards that have Enter the Battlefield effects. And yeah, there's a few, like people are even seeing that Fairies should be an Esper Fairies build for Restoration Angel, because it can bounce the Mistbind click. So there's already been some talk about that, and you can see it's definitely got some movement on MTGO. The only problem is this was a promo and it was everywhere. And like, I know at the store that I work for, we still have a ton of them running around. But Restoration Angel, definitely keep your eye on. And we missed the Shadow of the Doubt spike. This is a card I wanted to pick up a lot, and then I just never did. But there's a card a lot very similar to Shadow of Doubt. It's the Leonin Arbiter. And I think this card is actually worth picking up a playset or two. It's going crazy on MTGO. I mean, it's one of those specs that, from 10 cents to 30 cents is huge. But paper looks like it's starting to go up as well. So it's used in this Hate Bears type deck, which I think will be very, very popular. And again, Blade Splicer is one of those paper cards that it was printed in a pre-constructed deck, but it spiked like crazy on MTGO. So anyway, I hope this is just a good example. I'm not going to go through every card here, but that's how I usually do it. As I look at the top decks, I like Melira Pod. This is why I think Razorverge Thicket. So you go to Melira Pod, and 98% of Melira Pods using 3 Razorverge Thickets, and it's going for nothing here. It's going for like a couple bucks a piece for Razorverge Thickets. If it's used that much in the number one deck, which I do think the Pod will become the number one deck, then I do think that it is a very, very, very safe investment. And anyway, so that is the way that I do it. I highly suggest using the site. It's very streamlined. But one last way is I go to these format staples, and you can look at the dominance of cards. You can look at Snapcaster Mage. It's actually, according to MTG Goldfish, is the number one used card in the metagame. And Deathrite Shaman, of course, is going to be taken off this list, as it is going to be banned. But then you can look at all these other cards here that are used like crazy, and then spec accordingly. And that's how, when I looked at the Stony Silence, this was actually the number 10 card. If we go to view more, I'm pretty sure that Stony Silence will be on the top spells here. 11th is Stony Silence, and that is exactly why I spec'd it at the time being, as I thought it'd be a great pickup. Is It Charms is something I'm picking up a lot of, especially the promo, as it is used like crazy in Modern. But this is just a list of everything that's used on Modern. Most used spells you can actually classify by lands and creatures and overall as well, and you can make specs accordingly. But that's exactly how I did it a year ago, and this is how I still continue to look at cards. See, I'm not one of those. I don't like to invest in cards that are already very expensive. I like to invest in cards that are still low, and going from 2 to 12 is a 6 times increase. That's like, if you're expecting a $10 card, that's like going from 10 to 60. That's kind of the Bitter Blossom. And people are like, wow, Bitter Blossom spiked like crazy. Well, yes, it has. But if you would have spent that exact same money in, say, the Spellskite before Spellskite went crazy, or let's even say that, or Inkmoth Nexus. Inkmoth Nexus, let's say, goes up to like a $15 card. That'd be the same increase, and it's a little more stable too, in my opinion, than the Bitter Blossom. I really think the Bitter Blossom still has yet to prove itself before it can even justify that $75 price tag. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm not going to do much editing on it. I'm just going to post this away, and one of these days I'll have one of these fancy videos. But definitely go check that Rogue Market video, episode 1, part 1, and you can see how much we've grown as a channel, how much I've grown as a speculator and as a YouTuber. And again, I appreciate all the likes, the subscribes, the support. Sorry I've been a little bit silent. I've been having problems with my internet connection as well. I've been a little bit under the weather. This has been Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching.